Good day and welcome to Talks by AFD. I am your host, Arthur Francis DeBank. Today, I want to look at the challenges, the growing challenges in the continent of Africa, especially in the very, very free three countries in Africa, which are Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. I think these are just the only three of them that I can 100% assure you that their resources, their wealth, their money, everything is being governed and controlled by them themselves. Unlike other African countries that are being controlled, still being controlled by the West. And for the time being, I've always thought that Trump is quite different. During the election, we the Africans, especially Nigerians, have always been supporting Donald Trump, believing that when he comes into power, there are going to be a whole lot of differences or changes in the way economically things have been played in Africa. And we've always hoped that Trump is going to step into the judiciary, the corruption in the judiciary and the electoral processes, especially in Nigeria, in order for us to have a right man being voted in where the vote of the people will actually count. Along the line, I've seen that Trump isn't that quite different or different from other America, for example, George Bush, Obama, and so on, because he has told the path which Obama took in order to keep Africa perpetually poor and perpetually in need of her own resources, that she wouldn't have control or access of our own resources in order to take care of our own people, to live like every other country or continent are living. Now, we've seen that whenever Africans or any African country tends to be doing very well, you will see the Western countries will begin to creep in a little bit to try to frustrate that effort. We saw that during the Gaddafi regime. Gaddafi was a very good president. Most of it, let's call it 90%, he was a good man. He was having one of the best economy in Africa and even one of the best leading economy in the world. In Libya, where their oil is being controlled by Gaddafi himself, he never allowed the Westerners to have access into it. And he opened an African bank. He was in the process of having an African bank where Africans could loan their own money from their own bank where there would virtually be no interest. And Gaddafi is one of the men who planted the satellite into space, where we Africans will have to call Africans by passing through our own satellite and not passing through Europe down to Africa. For example, I'm in Nigeria, I want to call a friend in Niger. I will have to pass through Europe before I get to Niger. So Gaddafi changed all of that. And in Libya back then, when Gaddafi was still in power, they have one of the finest economy. Like I said, it was a compulsory education for all their citizens from their first primary level to up to their master's degree level. It was that good. And when you graduate, you're likely going to have a job. If you do not have a job in Libya back then, the country are going to give you will be paying you commensurably to what you should have been getting had it been you were working. And if peradventure one is sick and the country cannot afford the medical facilities to take care of you, they send you outside the country through the government expenses that you'll be treated, and after which they bring you back into the country. So that is how beautiful life was in Libya, and the economy was one of the most flourishing in Africa until Obama came. When Obama came, he came with some useless policies, if you ask me. And one unique thing about the West, whenever they want to trample into Africa or any African country, they tend to use one of their own, which we call a house nigger. They use one of the house nigger, a man whom they can control. They send you into the country or continent to cause destruction. And it will be in record that the havoc and everything that will be done to that country will be in the hands of that nigger, who is the house nigger, whom they control the much they can. So when Obama came, Obama knew too well that Libya was one of the most flourishing countries in Africa and one of the most in the world. They have one of the best resources that the West don't even have. And he also knows that Gaddafi has prevented the Westerners from having access to their oil and their mineral resources, and they were looking for ways in which to infiltrate the system, which they could not. They have to steer the people against him. And when that happened, he came online, on air, to talk about the devastating effect on the things going on in Libya and how he's making ultimatum for Gaddafi to stop and all of that. And all of those things was because he was a house nigger, meant to cause destruction to his own people. And at the end of the day, he achieved that. Okay, probably you're going to listen to that and see how.
Muammar Gaddafi clearly lost the confidence of his own people and the legitimacy to lead. Instead of respecting the rights of his own people, Gaddafi chose the path of brutal suppression. Ample warning was given that Gaddafi needed to stop his campaign of repression or be held accountable. The Arab League and the European Union joined us in calling for an end to violence. Just yesterday, speaking of the city of Benghazi, a city of roughly 700,000 people, he threatened, and I quote, "We will have no mercy and no pity." Now here's why this matters to us. Left unchecked, we have every reason to believe that Gaddafi would commit atrocities against his people. Many thousands could die. A humanitarian crisis would ensue. The entire region could be destabilized, endangering many of our allies and partners. And that's why the United States has worked with our allies and partners to shape a strong international response at the United Nations. Now, once more, Muammar Gaddafi has a choice. The resolution that passed lays out very clear conditions that must be met. The United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Arab states agree that a ceasefire must be implemented immediately. That means all attacks against civilians must stop. Gaddafi must stop his troops from advancing on Benghazi, pull them back from Ajubia, Misrata, and Zawiya, and establish water, electricity, and gas supplies to all areas. Humanitarian assistance must be allowed to reach the people of Libya. Let me be clear, these terms are not negotiable. These terms are not subject to negotiation. If Gaddafi does not comply with the resolution, the international community will impose consequences, and the resolution will be enforced through military action.
So, after all of that, the next thing was he invaded Libya, as in Obama invaded Libya using NATO, the same NATO that is as useless as anything before Russia. Because Africans do not have the military might, we do not have the resources, all of that, because the same Africa, which would have been which is the richest continent in the world, which should have been one of the most flourishing nations in the world, is being impeded by the Westerners in order that they don't have access to their resources in order to get what they want. So he used NATO and invaded Libya, and Gaddafi was killed. And according to him before, he said it's going to bring stability and all of that. Till today, 2025 as we speak, Libya is in chaos. It's still in chaos. It's in divisions among itself. And Libya is one of the worst countries now in Africa. That is the work of Barack Obama, the good works of Barack Obama, who could not even look aside, could not even think for 1 second that these people I want to fight, that I'm being pushed to fight, are my own people, are Africans, are blacks like him. But what the hell, he never thought about it, because he's that useless nigger in the house that has been pushed to do whatever they want him to do, and he achieved it. And after all of that, we understood that Africa, which is under the control of the West, have no right of her own. She, as a continent, cannot stand for herself, for all the leaders of Africans who stood up against the West, either assassinated or coup d'etat to remove you, and so on and so forth. So this problem has always been there until presently or recently, where Russia, the greatest power on earth presently, decided to back up these three African nations, Libya, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. And with their support, he has to, thanks to Putin, he has to send the Wagner group to support them in order to prevent them from being assassinated as usual. And trust me, since Ibrahim Traore, the president of Burkina Faso, took power, as at 4th April 2025, he has overcame 18 coup attempts. 18 good coup attempts. God willing, he's going to succeed and continue to overcome them in all directions. So we've seen that since Africans never had a mind, after the Syrian issues and problems, Putin decided to move some of their mercenaries and all their weapons to Mali, and they were spotted at Bamako, and I believe which part of them will be shared among the three countries, Niger and Burkina Faso. So they were moved down to Mali, and the West were complaining. You can see that also in the video when that happened.
These photographs have created a stir in Mali. This is a massive convoy of Russian military equipment. It includes tanks, armored vehicles, and artillery systems. This convoy was spotted near Mali's capital, Bamako. Where's it coming from, and where's it going? In a volatile country like Mali, this kind of firepower is bound to turn heads. It's simply too difficult to ignore, or even hide. Government officials say the equipment is for Mali's armed forces, but observers think otherwise. They say this gear belongs to the African Corps, the successor to the Wagner Group in Africa. Reports say that the equipment was transferred from Syria. After the fall of Bashar al-Assad, Russia has been scaling back its presence there. It is becoming evident that Africa is a growing priority for Moscow. The African Corps are directly controlled by the Russian Defense Ministry. It's unclear how many troops Russia has in Mali. This convoy could be the first clue. It's large enough to support a sizable military presence. Russia's presence and influence in Mali has grown steadily since 2021, when a coup installed the country's military junta to power. Russia provides them with protection and support through troop deployments and military transfers. In exchange, Russia reaps clear benefits. The most important is access to Mali's resources. The country is rich in gold, oil, gas, and uranium, and Russia frequently taps into this reserve. However, Russia's involvement in Mali goes beyond these tangibles. With international sanctions tightening, Moscow has been forced to adapt. It has been losing friends and access to key markets. To counter this, Russia is cultivating new allies in Africa. Its reach extends beyond Mali. The African Corps also has a presence in nations like Burkina Faso and Niger. Together, these nations form a network of pro-Russian states and give a large footprint to Russia in the global south. But this influence comes at a price. With the war in Ukraine,
So, at large, we've been able to see that. So, at a point, Africans have been able to equip themselves a little bit in order to withstand the trend and the changes that are going on in the continent and in their countries. And we understood that the West are terribly angry, and the France as a country has been working day and night, which I believe they are the ones behind the coup going on in Burkina Faso to unseat Ibrahim Traore. And we know Ibrahim Traore was one of the youngest African presidents. In the recent times, we have one of the most flourishing economy in Africa. Yes. And he has done so well in a manner that they would not have achieved that even in 100 years. That is what he has achieved within the very few years he has been there. It's about close to 2 years of the rap. So he has achieved that. And recently, Michael Langley in American Senate, another house nigger, you understand, Americans are beginning to look into the issue, hoping that, according to them, they are accusing Traore of misusing the Burkina Faso's gold.
I can imagine a situation, though, in which the ruling elite of a country is receiving gratuities on the side that inure to the benefit of the strongman leader and not to the populace of the country. Does that sort of corruption and bribery go on with regard to the Belt and Road?
Absolutely, Chairman. I see this, and I don't mind calling them out, but Captain Traore and Burkina Faso, as they know that both, whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime. There's a number of examples across, even in Sudan.
For his own personal gains and all of that. And if we want to look into this whole thing, Burkina Faso is an African country. It's never a European country and thereabout. So I do not know how is that their problem. And if you accuse him of using the gold for his own personal good, have you gone to Burkina Faso recently to see the changes and the growth that are going in there? I think all of those claims are just to look for ways to unseat him, to carry another coup in order to remove them from seat, in order that they continue to use our resources. And after Michael Langley, the House nigger in American Senate, make mention of that statement and all of that, and how he's a general of AFRICOM. So after that time, there was another coup attempt in Burkina Faso. So my surprise and shock is that I never thought that this kind of things will ever happen during Trump's administration. I was looking at Trump as an upright man, a man who will stand for the truth, who is going to stand to protect the Africans and make Africans great. Although he has called us a whole lot of names, shitholes and all of that. But I thought, in my own common sense, that probably it's only saying that because our leaders aren't standing up to the challenges they're in, that it's going to ensure that happens. But I was shocked to my marrows that in his own regime, in his own reign, which is not up to a year, he's allowing such things to happen, which means he also stands with the general notion of the Westerners that Africa are of strategic importance to the West. That we Africans are just there for their own growth, that we are meant to remain poor, that they continue to use our resources for their own growth. It begins to make me think as if those in Africans are not humans. Aren't humans, that we Africans can live anyhow we want to live, provided they are fine. And the worst part of it all, they go into the international community to tell us how useless Africa is and our leaders they're in the countries, as such that many people in the Western world are beginning to confuse Africa as a continent and as a country. You ask them which one is the poorest country in the world, they will tell you Africa. You can begin to imagine that. Meanwhile, they forgot that without Africa, most of these countries would have been as useless as anything. Those countries are succeeding, have grown to wherever they are today, but just because of the resources that they have been stripping from the African continent. But today, they begin to think we are nothing, that we cannot be nothing. Even Trump will allow that to happen in his own regime. But I know too well, there is time for everything. In my own perspective I believe that probably, but I think the time has come which Africa are going to break free from this chain. Be it as it may, Putin is still alive. Putin is the president of Russia. Putin is still behind Africa. I believe, but before Putin will be done with his regime, Africa will be strong enough, or those countries in Africa that are under authorship of the Russians will be so strong and powerful of their own to withstand the challenges that will come their way. We've seen a lot of death in African continent, in Africa, countries, the countries in Africa, how many of our leaders were assassinated and all of that. And we have always hoped and believed that one day we're going to be free, which I believe in my own mind that time is now, with Putin as the president. If he continues to back Africa up just like he did in sending those weapons to Mali, which I know certainly will get into Burkina Faso and Niger, and if he continues in this might with the Wagner behind them, I believe they're going to succeed. And I want to beg all the African leaders, all of them in all the African countries, they should come together to support their own. They shouldn't allow the Westerners to continue to use them in the manner in which they're using them right now. Makes me think, and everybody looks at them as if they don't have common sense. You cannot have all the resources in the world, your own people can't eat. You cannot have all the resources in the world, and you cannot even pay them, your own citizens, pay them probably well. The resources you have, you still take them to the same Western countries who are the puppeteers, and you continue to save them. They actually do not complain because they still use all of that money for their own group, and it's terrible. So I think Africa will succeed. Now, strategic goods and many other things are coming forward. If we stick with them, Africa is going to grow. But we can only succeed if we rise up to protect that which is our own. Ibrahim Traore has shown us a pathway that every other African country can be liberated. Mali, Niger, yes, they've also shown us that Africa can be liberated. We have to rise. Africa have to rise. Nigeria, Burkina, South Africa, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and all of these, Africa, Congo, and so on, they can all rise up and change the status quo. They can rise up and tell the world that they are ready. They can rise up to tell the world that their time is now. The Israelites in the Holy Scripture were taken captive for many years, but they were liberated someday. Africa will be liberated too. It could be now, and nothing but now. Thank you. God bless you.